When it comes to Disney Star Wars, the studio's been handling it in a way that really hasn't sit well with longtime Star Wars fans, and they haven't been shy about calling this out whenever they see issues. One of the big issues is with the Acolyte, which seems to be a culmination of many of the negative qualities of Disney Star Wars all brought into one spot. But to be fair and give credit where credit's due, there are some positive qualities with the Acolyte that is being pointed out to by one of the stars of the Acolyte, Dafne Keen, who plays Jecki Lon. But by pointing this out, she's inadvertently kind of throwing shade at the rest of Disney Star Wars and a lot of other things that they've been doing in the past with a lot of their shows and stuff that longtime fans of Star Wars have been pointing out with Disney Star Wars, but have been just kind of getting dismissed up to this point. So right now, it is nice to see people working on the show basically kind of affirming what a lot of longtime fans have been saying about Disney Star Wars is that, well, frankly, they're just kind of afraid to actually kill off characters if they believe that they can market them in some way, shape, or form. The Acolyte star Dafne Keen opens up about and defends the shocking fifth episode. The Star Wars show's latest episode, entitled Night, was essentially a 30-minute long duel between the Jedi and the Darksider, who is known as the Stranger. The article goes on to talk about how Leslye Headland was willing to create characters and build them up to make them seem like they're more prominent than what they are, only for them to get killed off in a pretty anticlimactic way just to show how powerful the main villain of this show was. And I do think there should be a certain amount of praise on that. It's not necessarily the most unique thing in the current environment of television and movies, but still, I will give credit where credit's due. However, I do believe they are kind of overplaying this just a little bit, and I will get more on that in a moment. But first, let's look at what Dafne Keen actually had to say about this in her own words. There are so many directors in blockbuster sagas that are so scared to kill off their characters and are so comfortable with bringing characters back to life and all of these little writing tricks that I think are quite cheeky. And I really think that she was actually killing people because if you're not making it dangerous, then why are we even here? Why are we concerned by the story? Why do we care? Leslye has such a backbone as a writer to make you fall in love with these characters and then slaughter them all like pigs and be like, yeah, this is our villain. We're not just saying he's big and scary. We're actually showing you how big and scary he is. And I can agree with her to an extent because sometimes it is necessary to kill off prominent characters in order to establish the stakes. Was it 100% necessary in this one? I don't know, because if you actually look at the people who are there, this article is from IGN where they have this poll that's talking about the Jedi deaths in there and people can be voting on who they think had the best death. And it just has 5 of them are listed as unnamed Jedi. So if you want to establish how powerful the bad guy is, you could just have him kill off 5 Jedi when he's getting attacked by a group of them. All right, that would establish him as being powerful. We don't necessarily need to kill off your named characters, but they decided to do that. And like I said, I think there are some merit to that. Other times, though, it can just be shocking just for the sake of shocking. We saw that in Game of Thrones, for instance. It felt like some of the latter seasons where they were just killing off named characters just for the sake of it. And even though it was more shocking in the earlier seasons because you weren't expecting it, as the show went on, it became just kind of normal where you expected named characters to get killed off. So suddenly it has no impact. What would have been shocking if certain characters actually survived. So you have to pick and choose when's the right time to do that. In The Last Jedi, for instance, Rian Johnson deciding to kill off Snoke, I think was a bad decision because he didn't do it because he had any idea where they were going with it. He was just thinking like, I'm making this one movie, so what can I do that would shock people by watching this one movie? I know the big bad that was established for this trilogy. I'm just going to kill him off in the second movie, and because I don't care what they're going to be doing after this, because I don't have to think about that. So then in the last movie, when that came around, they're like, well, we don't know what we're doing because he already killed off our villain. Like, okay, let's just bring back Palpatine somehow. It doesn't make any sense. We'll just try to figure out how to make it work later on. And that's kind of what they're doing with some of the series now. But it's like, yeah, just kill off the main bad guy, then figure out what to do with it later. I think that was a situation where they were just doing it for the sake of it. And that's not really the best way of going about it. In this series, though, I think it is kind of a direct response to what we saw, the reaction for when it shows like Ahsoka, because in the opening episode of Ahsoka, how Sabine gets impaled by a lightsaber and it was just like no big deal. She just wakes up the next episode in a hospital, just a flesh wound, no big deal, and just kind of goes on her way. And it's like, yeah, that's not really the best way to establish the stakes in your episode when someone who isn't necessarily a lightsaber user is fighting someone who is and survives it, even though she got impaled by a lightsaber, because that just goes to show it's like, okay, so there's really no stakes in there, or this lightsaber user, this dark side user is not really that powerful if she isn't able to kill someone who doesn't even use a lightsaber. Because you see, that's not really the best way of going about doing things. And I normally wouldn't have been as critical over Ahsoka if it wasn't also made by Dave Filoni. Because if you're inheriting something from someone else, I can understand a certain level of respect there. It's like, okay, I was given these characters by this other person. I don't just want to kill off their characters just to bring in my own character. So I would give a little bit more leeway for that. But Dave Filoni created these characters. He created this show. So I think he should have been willing to kill off some of his characters just to establish the stakes. He clearly wasn't able to do that. And I think the show suffered as a result of that. But whether this new thing for the Acolyte will help them, I really doubt it, because it looks like the show's not even going to get another season. A lot of the fans don't like it. You can see the ratings on a lot of review aggregate sites like Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb are pretty poor for it. The viewership for it is pretty poor. This article from That Park Place kind of highlights that, because this is talking about how Leslye Headland doesn't believe that she's actually going to get a second season, or she tried to plan for this season just to be a standalone thing because there's no guarantee you're going to get a second one. I think there's certain praise to be had with that, because too often people are trying to just build up something so it just leads to the next thing and it kind of ends on a cliffhanger. She's saying she's not doing that, but still, it's not really instilling much confidence when she doesn't even think that her show's going to get a second season. So she's trying to treat it as a one or done. Like, look at right here when it's talking about the viewership for it. The Walt Disney Company officially revealed that the show's first 2 episodes only garnered 11.1 million global views after the first 5 days of streaming on Disney Plus. Given the Walt Disney Company calculates a view by totaling stream time divided by runtime, the global minutes viewed only comes to 120 million minutes. That's 9 million minutes less than Ahsoka's minutes watched metric as reported by Nielsen. The big kicker is that Nielsen only tracks in the United States. That means Ahsoka's US viewership was bigger than the Acolyte's entire global viewership. So that's pretty bad, especially when you consider that the Acolyte is one of the more expensive Disney Plus Star Wars shows. It's like around double of what they spent on Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan had more than twice the viewership as the Acolyte. And that's even not getting a second season, despite Ewan McGregor like lobbying and petitioning Disney to renew it for a second season. That's not the case with that, because it just wasn't feasible for them or viable for the company. So that's why they're not doing it. And I think that's pretty bad, because even though they're doing some things, like I said, that are praiseworthy, like the fact that they are willing to kill off named characters, other things have done that in the past, like Rogue One, for instance, they're willing to do that. And I think that was probably the best thing that Disney Star Wars created up to this point. But still, despite that, the Acolyte is just something that isn't resonating with longtime Disney Star Wars fans. And I think it's not going to be one of those things that's going to bring them back. I've said before that I think Disney is using the Acolyte as kind of like their new starting off point, because they understand they're not going to bring back their longtime Disney Star Wars fans. So I think the Acolyte is deliberately trying to be kind of antagonistic towards them to push away that old fan base, because they're like, we just need to get rid of them, excise them completely, and then just kind of reestablish the new Disney Star Wars fan base and build up from there. And if that's the case, then fine, it's their property. They're free to do that. We still have the old George Lucas Star Wars. We have that to watch. There's nothing that they can do to change that. But I think if Disney is going to try to go down that route, it's not really the wise approach, because we've seen time and time again that the viewership for what they're trying to do with Disney Star Wars just isn't up to par with what they were paying billions of dollars for this franchise to get. So if that's really the audience that they're chasing, well, good luck with that. But if you're going to continue down this path, then you need to start reducing the budget on your shows and movies, because otherwise you're just going to go under. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. Do you agree with Dafne Keen that Disney hasn't been willing to actually do what's necessary, or do you think everything's been fine up until this point? And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest in entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share the video, because it helps out with the channel. Thank you.